begin with Brazil. Um, and what looks there like after tense days of protest, a path now clear for Lula and his comeback.
Well, in Brazil, nothing is very clear
Mm.
for very long. This is a very complex society, and its political system has more levels to it than the Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-American, Canadian world. So it's true that Lula won by a whisker by 1 million votes. So for 50.9 versus 48.1 for Bolsonaro. But the future, of course, is very, very charged because the Bolsonarians control the upper house, and there are 17 parties in Brazil, and in the Senate, it's a much more complex situation where bills are basically depend on coalitions of different parties with different interests being at play. So the one thing you can say is that Lula is very experienced in being able to negotiate, manipulate, make deals in this system. And I think his mandate is not as big as he wanted, will allow him to do two or three things. One, investment in infrastructure. So there's going to be a demand push. And in social policy, even though his Bolsa Familia was very successful in reducing poverty in Brazil, I think that's back on the agenda. There's going to be a lot more investment in that area. But Lula, like all governments, are restricted by slow growth and by the specter of inflation. So he has to negotiate very carefully between the domestic economy and stimulating domestic demand and pleasing foreign investors.
When you sit there as a professor of politics, you've been writing about populism, the war on liberal democracy, the future of both of those things, and you see a week like this swings from the left. We have Israel showing a very different picture, and then, as I mentioned, the midterms. Does that just show to you that there's no real global trajectory as we once imagined? That this, pendulum politics really is fully prevalent?
Well, I would agree with you. I think we're in a different cycle. I wouldn't use the word exactly pendulum politics, but I think that captures part of the dynamic. Populism, as we show in our book, is the new globalism. We looked at 35 governments, and many of us think that populism is Brexit, or populism is Trump, or populism is Orban or Obrador in Mexico or in India. But actually, there is a kind of insurgency across the world where people are voting populists, far right populists, into office. So populism means really two things, right? I mean, we get it. It means power to the people. That, I think, is the idea of social justice, social equity, reducing inequality, etc. But the second part of modern populism is power to the authoritarians, who are intent on a very different kind of agenda, not a social justice agenda, but really driven by fear and grievance, and believing that they represent the true people against the political class around the world, different political classes who have stolen their share of society's wealth, and they're on the warpath to change borders, change values, change structures, change outcomes.
And does that explanation still apply very much to your country, to Trump and his appeal, only last night to his rally in Iowa and saying, hinting that quite strongly that he's coming back, and those are
So
the things he
Hannah,
wants to appeal to.
well, first, Hannah, I'm in Canada, so
Sorry,
it's a
you're in
bit,
Canada. Complete.
yes, oh
Sorry.
my God, in Toronto. But you know what is very interesting? Canadians always thought, wow, we don't have Trump, we don't have the same extreme authoritarian leader. These attacks on rights and freedoms, the attacks on foreigners, attacks on gays. There's been a lot of anti-Semitism emerging in the last couple of days in the American election. There's been a lot of violence, kind of episodic violence, of course, symbolized by the attack on Pelosi's husband. But Canada also had the truckers' convoy, in which the kind of far right wing truckers and Canadians rallied to the cause in the occupation of Ottawa, occupying Ottawa for 3 weeks. So we are also in the midst of this populist revolution, this kind of hysteria and danger, because not only did we see the truckers' convoy, but recently the new leader of the Conservative Party, the Conservative Party of Canada, has been taken over by far right-wing populists. So we are a kind of parallel path. But back to the United States. The United States, it's very interesting that Trump, who has a very sharp political instincts, understands that the Democrats are going to take a thrashing in the midterms in a few days. They're going to lose the House quite dramatically. I don't think it's wrong to say what the polls are telling us, if you read them closely. Somewhere between Democrats are going to lose between 10 and 40 seats. Secondly, in the Senate, there are 4 or 5 states in play, and it's likely that the Republicans will prevail. So they'll have captured both houses, and that when you look at the candidates, the Republican candidates, they have been in many instances vetted by Trump and chosen and promoted by Trump. So you have now almost half of the Republican caucus who are election deniers. Well, why is all this important? Well, to come to the point, I think Trump is prepared to seize the moment, because Biden, this crushing defeat of the Democrats will be blamed on Biden, and Trump believes that this is his moment to re-enter the fray, and to re-enter and to declare publicly that he's going to run for president.